Kia ora e te iwi and welcome to Inside Netball ko Ravinda Hunia Aho. Our ANZ Premiership grand finalists are now determined after the Stars defeated the Mystics in the elimination final and will now face the Pulse for the trophy. Here to talk with me all about it are two former Silver Fern mid-quarters, Anna Stanley and Courtney Tairi. Kia ora korua.
Kia ora. Kia ora, ladies.
Now, Annie, I'm going to start with you on this one because that elimination final kind of had it all. It was probably more interesting than exciting for me, but what did you make of it?
Well, it was interesting and exciting, certainly in the second half when the Mystics decided to play. Look, I think the end result, the Stars probably deserved to win, but you just can't help but think the Mystics blew it slightly, not starting Grace Nowicki. You know, you look at the hard, cold facts. When she's on the court, they put up 20 more attempts than any other team. So when you put her on for 3 quarters, you just think, why didn't Helene start her in the first? But defensively, the Mystics, they just didn't turn up in that first half. Fitzpatrick and Phoenix, unfortunately, took too long to get into the game. You know, the good thing, they did come into it at half-time and they won that third quarter 20-15. And, you know, it started to get exciting. And I was thinking, oh, God, here we go. The Mystics are going to sneak one over the Stars. But I just think when you look at the momentum that the Stars have had coming into that game in that elimination final, the way they've been playing, I think they deserve to win. They looked sharp. Defensively, Harrison and Temu were outstanding. And the attacking has been what's been really holding them together over the last few rounds. So I think when you sort of reflect back on the game, I think, you know, the best team is going through to the grand final.
I agree with you, Annie. Why not start with Grace Nowicki? We know what she brings, and the Mystics actually put up less shots than the Stars, which is unusual for them. And I think in that last 10, 15 minutes of the game, especially in elimination final, it's all mental. So if she's out there from the start, they've applied that pressure to the Stars, and then they can keep rolling with it. I think also when you have Grace on, the middies can turn and bomb, and what that does is it saves their legs to help the defensive end. For Amu Ioane was a standout for me because she was applying that pressure. We saw it in the second half. It allowed Phoenix and Sulu to come out hunting because the middies weren't having to work as hard down the attacking end. But the Stars, they were so solid. Maya Wilson, 42 from 44. She really stood up. And I also think Jamie Hume, she took control. She allowed Maya and her to just split the Mystics' defence. So I think it was an outstanding job by the Stars. Everyone did their jobs very, very well.
Agreed. Let's have a look at that Mystics attack end that you mentioned, Courtney, because I was actually surprised Monica Faulkner stayed on for that full match. Annie, were you surprised that Faulkner got the full game?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to think she finished on 4 from 6 in 60 minutes of netball, 67%. The volume wasn't there. And Phil DeVuy has been actually getting the nod at goal attack over Faulkner when Grace Nowicki wasn't there. So it just seemed weird that then suddenly Helene would put Faulkner in at goal attack. I thought Vui would have just given the defence of the Stars another player to think about. You know, she could have taken the pressure off Grace Nowicki because they were actually double teaming Grace at one point. So, you know, she just would have added a little bit of more presence down that attack end. She's got a more accurate shot than Faulkner. She rolls that top of the circle really well. So I was quite surprised. I have heard, though, she has been unwell. So whether that played a factor in not putting her on, that could have been a reason.
Yeah, I still would have put her on too. I mean, you're down anyway. You've got to try things in an elimination final. I think you're right, Addie. She would have rolled the top better. And also, Monica, she didn't really get into her groove. She didn't put up many shots. When she did, she was getting held balls. You could see she was kind of balking on her shot. So the Stars defence knew straight away, let her get the ball, you know, let her shoot. And you could actually hear it. They're like, let her have it, let her have it. And when, as a player too, when you hear that, you're thinking, oh no, they're on to me here. So I would have put Phil DeVuy on to try anything in those situations.
Now, you said something interesting off camera, Courtney, about Namina. She was obviously battling some sort of injury as well.
Yeah, her hand was heavily taped and strapped up. And so for her to get the start, I thought was very interesting. But also to put an injured player out there in an elimination final who's not even part of your contracted team. She still played very well and held her own as she did last week for the Mystics. But for me, you're not putting out, I think, someone that's not in your contracted team, especially if they're injured. I just would have started Grace Nowicki.
Yeah, bottom line really.
And you've got to question some of the changes. You've got to question some of the changes that Helene Wilson has done over the last 2 games. You know, that Pulse Mystics game, she made a raft of changes. She took Namina off when they were 4 in it against the Pulse. and then sort of it capitulated for the Mystics. We saw Sulu Fitzpatrick go from goal keep to wing defence, and you're just like, what is going on? So, yeah, certainly questionable some of the changes that she's done over the last few games. And yeah, I think the big one is we've both alluded to that you've got Grace Nowicki out there for 3/4. Why not put her on for 4? And I think that could have been the difference really in the end. It was only 6, and she's worth so many points.
Yeah, that's so true. When you talk about changes, Phoenix Karaka and goal shoot comes to mind as well. And I was actually hoping that would pay off and that that she would be a viable option, but it didn't turn out that way. I think at the end of that match, you could feel the emotion. You could see the Mystics were so disappointed in that performance. There were tears from the Stars and the Mystics, happy and sad. And I couldn't help but really feel for Grace Nowicki. We talk about they were quite frazzled and things, and that was the story without Grace Nowicki on court, right? And I thought in this elimination final, they still couldn't get rid of that, even with Nowicki back. Anna, when you think about Grace Nowicki in that game last night, I got this feeling anyway that there was a lot of pressure on her shoulders to take her team to a grand final.
Yeah, and this could be the making of her. She's dealt with a lot this year, had her first significant injury. She's had to come back probably sooner than she would have hoped because of where they were sitting on the table, and they wanted her for the elimination final. But this is only going to make her stronger. It's going to, help with her resilience. She's in it for the long run when you look at what she can give the Silver Ferns. So I thought at times in that game she looked quite emotional, and she looked like she was starting to get a little bit rattled. Timu and Harrison, they wouldn't be the easiest of defenders to have up against. They're pretty niggly and tight, and I just think at times she did look like she was just borderline going to start like breaking down in tears. And I think that's a result of perhaps just the emotional roller coaster ride she's been under and the pressure. But, she'll rise above it, and she can only learn from it and benefit from it in the long run.
One star shooter that came out of that elimination final last night was Maya Wilson, and in case you missed it, here was her reaction straight after the match.
What a match from your side and yourself. You look like another one wiping a few tears away after that game.
I know this time last year I think I was wiping sad tears away, but so proud of the effort. And the last time we were in the final, it was a bit of the shock, but to be able to come out here and really put a clinical performance, in particular on attack, I felt like we scored majority of our balls, so I'm really proud.
You look like you were playing with so much confidence. How are you feeling ahead of this match?
I think, for us, we started to build at the right time, and we knew that Mystics are a side that are quality, they are clinical, and they're able to score fast, which they were doing for a majority of that 4th quarter. So we knew there was going to be a lot of work to do, but I'm proud of my girls. They slogged it out. There was some relentless defence on there, and to be able to finish.
Obviously, your defence end, they've been amazing week in and week out this season, but you're attacking in your combination with Jamie and Gina. Did it feel the best it's ever felt tonight?
I think it sort of just felt the same. Probably from the last maybe 4 or 5 rounds, we're really finding our edge. And I talked about how we had to step up a couple of weeks ago when we were out without Scar. And I feel like we've just built that momentum going on. So I think this puts us in a really good space for Sunday, and I'm really excited for it.
Last game in 2022 in front of your home crowd. They were huge tonight. What do you want to say to your supporters?
I am so appreciative, and I just have so much love for our Stars whānau, our Purple Army. There were some awesome girls that were in there, purple head to toe with their tutus and all, and I think that really got us over the line in that game, and we're just so grateful to have a really good support base.
Well, I asked Gina quickly. She couldn't really give me an answer. I can't blame you if you can't either, but what's the plan for the Pulse on Sunday?
To play like that again, I think for us, we need to just continue to build. Pulse they're not going to bow down to us. They are solid, and so it's for us to be able to stand up, and in particular in the last couple of minutes of each quarter, did well in the first quarter, so quite proud of that, but we want a bit more consistency.
Bring it on. Congrats, Miles, on your MVP performance.
Thank you, Stormy P.
And from one shooter to another, breaking news overnight, Kat Tuivaiti, who we thought, if she was a shoo-in for coaching gigs, that she might head back our way and take up the Mystics job, but it is not to be. But she will be taking up a role with the Wasps in the UK. So from us to you, Kat, all the very best with your future venture. I know you and your whānau will be very happy with that decision. Talking about that, she played for the Mystics and for the Pulse. So let's get into some grand final prediction chat. Now, Of course, after an elimination final, your head turns to the grand final. But you mentioned it before, that in 2019, the Pulse and the Stars met in Wellington. Kitty Wills, Yvette McCausland-Durie. Also, that year, players were playing for a World Cup spot. This time, they're playing for Commonwealth Games spot. So, it brings that intensity that we might see again. Annie, is it safe to go off results of the year? The Stars have played the Pulse 3 times this year and beaten them twice.
No, I don't think that counts for anything when you hit the grand final. It's whatever team turns up on the day. You look at the sort of games coming into it for both sides. The Stars, they've had more games in the last month than the Pulse. They would have had a 3-day recovery. The Pulse have had 8 days, so you could argue that they'll be a little bit fresher. But then you look at the Pulse; they're the youngest team in the ANZ competition, so they perhaps won't have the experience as the Stars. There's lots of different things you can take into account, but at the end of the day, it's the team that wants it the most, that shows up, that has that passion, and that is just willing to go that extra mile to take the win. Because as you say, they've played 3 times this year. The Pulse, actually, when they beat the Stars, beat them by 10. And the 2 times the Stars beat the Pulse, it was only by 1 and by 5. So there's not much in it. It's a home final for the Pulse. You could argue that could play a slight part. But then, the Stars are coming in with all the momentum. So it's really just going to come down to who's going to put the best 60 minutes out on court on Sunday.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I don't think we can really look at it, or any teams can look at it like, oh, we've beat them twice this season. Although Kitty Will, she did say it after the elimination final, we've got it over on them, we've beat them twice this season, but it's completely different once you're in finals netball. And I feel like obviously the Stars, they had to worry about the Mystics last night, and they have a very short turnaround. And I know Yvette McCausland-Durie, she was sitting there watching the game, picking apart everything the Stars were doing, and I think she'll have a very strong game plan for the grand final to take it to the Stars. But like you said, Annie, the Stars, they're coming in with momentum. Pulse don't quite have that experience, and we have seen them sort of crumble in those precious situations this season already. But I do think they have the brains trust of Yvette there, and also why? Somewhere in the background. So I think they will have a very strong game plan coming into the grand final.
Whānau, of course, we are talking grand final matches, and this Sunday it goes down the Pulse v the Stars. And joining us today to hopefully give us a little bit of insight is Pulse head coach Yvette McCausland-Durie. Kia ora whaia, and welcome to the show.
Kia ora, ngā mihi.
Now, I'll start off with, where were you, how were you, what were you last night watching that elimination final?
Yeah, well, my Sky pass ran out, so I actually had to go to Sandy's place, and I watched it with her. So that was really good. But no, it was great. And I think awesome game, Just so many elements to it. It looked like it was going to be a one-sided affair. And certainly Grace made her impact when she came on, along with Alyssa Peta. I thought their connection looked great. So, yeah.
Yvette, you are the most successful franchise now, and that's largely due to you. You're back again next year. What is it in the way that you coach that brings out the best in your players?
Oh, I don't know. I think that's why I keep coming back, just to see if I can do it better. But I guess, look, we have been really fortunate with, I think retention is a really key part of it. So players have stayed in the environment. And I think largely for me, we've worked really hard to create the environment with as much about proximity to training space, about making performance and our time over that ANZ Premiership season as our number one priority. So people have moved and relocated, and I think that makes a really huge difference to what we can commit to. I think on top of that, I really value the additional support in our space, the other coaches, and of course there's been Sandy, Palesa, and of course now Anna, and Y has always been there with us, and of course Irene as well. So I've really valued the input. I think it adds to players learning to listen to other people, giving players extension where I'm not the whole answer and I don't have all the answers, but being open enough to share with others. So I think those are really critical parts. And then the last one probably for me is just having that really strong connection with Manawa through the National Netball League, and making sure that we're showing there's a clear pathway for players within our zone, that being a Pulse player is a possibility, and this is how we do that. And why myself have stayed involved right through that level, right through to secondary school and age group level. And I think it's being present across our whole zone consistently is a really important part too.
And Yvette, how important has it been for you to start developing new leaders? Because you did lose a lot of star power in Ignacio, Kirsten, Berger, Rore. So the importance of, I guess, fostering this new wave of leaders.
Yeah, it is. It's been really important. I think it was one of the pieces that really attracted for me to come back was it was a new start, a new group. Some of them were starting line players when I left, and others were just, I've heard more from them in this year than I heard in the 3 years I'd been before. So it's been really nice to see them take the brand and look at what they want to do in terms of moving it forward. We've had what we've called our Mana Leadership Group, which has involved our two co-captains of Tiana and Kelly, and has also included both Maddie and Whitney. And I think for me, it's just looking at the strengths of people, not just on the court, but their strengths off the court, and how we can bring those to fruition and find ways that they can add value about not just performance, but about making sure that we've got a professional culture and that everything that we do is about not a decision about convenience, but a decision really about, is this going to move us forward from a performance perspective? So I've really enjoyed watching that group of four grow as young women and grow as players. And I guess the other part for me that I have to play in terms of the leadership is making sure that everyone has role clarity, both on and off the court, and all members of the team are part of what we call our groups. And so they all have a part to play around pastoral, intensity, all those sorts of pieces. And each week they make themselves known about what they think we can be doing better and what they're pleased with from their peers. And I think it's just growing that connection, that they can have conversations with their peers, because it's not easy to do, but I think as young women, somewhat we make it more difficult because it becomes personal when it isn't personal.
Yvette, just looking at those pictures behind you, we can see that you're building more than just a club and players and leaders. You're building quite the legacy. We're helping all these other wahine around you build the legacy of the Pulse. And as Annie mentioned, you've signed on again for 2023. What attracts you to come back? Because it's not an easy job, and we know when you had stepped into the commentary role here at Sky Sport, you mentioned that it's not easy, and it's let alone not easy to get to grand finals like you've been doing with the Pulse when you're at the helm. So what keeps you coming back for you as a coach?
Yeah, look, I left it loving it. I love working with teams. I enjoy coaching, whether it's year sevens or, at this level. And so I think for me, it's always recognising that I've got spaces that I can learn and grow in, and being really open to that. And I think for me, the bit I love is building a culture, building a group of people, seeing them improve, seeing them do what you ask them to do, sharing their ideas and trying to find space where they get to express their best potential. So I love being with people. I guess there's a real synergy with teaching, and so that ability to use some of those skills across in coaching is huge. And I feel hugely supported by not only this franchise, but our zone in general have a real interest in making sure that our young players have true pathways. So I feel invested not just at this level, but across our whole zone. I go back, I start on the Monday after we finish reviews, the 20th of June, back at Manukura at school, and it just keeps reminding you that people have got to have hope, people have got to have a pathway, and for our young women, we've got to continue to keep growing and showing those opportunities.
We certainly know how to get the best out of players, and one player that we've talked up all season is your co-captain at the back, Kelly Durie. When did you see the shift in her game, whether it be physical or mental? Because there has been a massive shift within Durie this year. Was it after the off season when she'd done the hard yards, she'd put in the fitness?
I think for me, I actually saw some of the biggest shift in her last season. That ability to get her footwork going. She's had two, major injuries with shoulder and Achilles, but has really been able to sustain her work in the background. So with that time has come confidence, and being at goal keep compared to goal D gives her more time.
Now, Yvette, you've been in this situation before, the Pulse and the Stars 2019. They say you need to lose one to win one, which would be the Stars. So I guess what's your focus this week and your key messages to the team?
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be an amazing game. And I think throughout the season, we've seen really good close contests. And I certainly think that the Stars have got momentum at this stage and they've got consistency. And those are two things that we probably have struggled with throughout the season. And I think it's part of growing new groups and, personnel have changed at different times. But that said, I think for us, we've been really focused this week on can both ends please turn up and do the job on the same day at the same time. We can have that. That'll be just absolutely brilliant.
Quite
So
simple.
we haven't got. Yeah, I think it's quite simple. Small ball into little hoop. But I know that for a number of players, for me, it's just making sure that they've got real confidence in themselves. And interestingly enough, that this group are always surprised when they win, surprised that they're in a grand final. And there's a real, it's quite a nice thing to have. But on the back of that, I'm like, you really need to turn up and make sure you make this happen. So I do have faith in them. We've got enough experience in there. They've got a great connection as a group. We've shown, obviously we've gotten that number one position because we've had 4 really close games within 1 and 3 points. And the only game we didn't take that we lost, that we didn't take a bonus opening round against the Mystics, where we lost by 6. So we know we can stay in the dogfight and compete and contest, and it's going to take all of that. And of course, you're going to need to transcend with some moments of brilliance at times. So where will that come from? I'm hoping from us, it's from our senior players of, the ilks of Kelly, Aaliyah, Tiana, Maddie, Whitney, Ericana. I mean, Chris even. Look, we've got enough in our tank there, and I'm really comfortable that if things change, and things often change, that our Manawa girls are ready to go. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I don't know, you just feel a lot more relaxed than I probably have in the past. And if I reflect even on 2020, we knew we had to win that match. All the pressure was on us, and it's quite a different psyche going into it. So just been talking to this group about a performance mindset, and it's just simply actually just own your own job. Make sure you can do that. You've only got to beat one other player, and that's the player you're up against that day. You're not taking on a whole team. So keeping it reasonably simple, hoping that we've recovered and we've got the energy, and we've got a home crowd behind us. And yeah, look, I'm looking forward to the occasion, and I think it's just so special to be in this position.
Finally, Yvette, before we let you go, you said the word that I was thinking of, relaxed. You look absolutely relaxed, happy, poised, like it's just going to be another day on Sunday. But, is that something that you want to filter through to the girls to not get caught up in the occasion? Because it can get, overwhelming, especially for a group of being the youngest team in the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, sometimes they look at me and I'm a bit too relaxed, and I think they wonder if I'm taking in anything. But it's just kind of who I am, I guess. Win or lose, I stay the same no matter what. And I think for me, it's just having a level of consistency, so they know that they can trust that my response will be absolutely about performance, and they can trust that if they can keep the same mindset that they've had coming in, even just down to their little protocols. We're not going in as a group. We're doing everything as if it's another home game. But I know when they walk in there, for those who haven't been at finals before, it's just been able to take that in, absorb what it is, which is a special occasion, and then just knuckle back down. And some people can do that really quickly, and some you don't know until you get there how they respond. So yeah, hopefully I can just be a calm presence within the group. And I am really looking forward to it. It's just I'm really proud of this group to have got this far.
Well, Yvette, thank you so much for your time this morning. We understand there's a couple of training sessions on the books to be done today before Sunday, but thank you again for your time, and all the very best going into the ANZ Premiership Grand Final.
Good luck.
Ngā mihi, kia ora.
Ngā mihi, kia koe anō whaia. Thank you so much for your comments. That just leaves us to do one more thing before the Grand Final, Korua. Let's get in those predictions. Annie, who have you got for the Grand Final this weekend?
I found this actually quite hard to pick. Stars are coming in with the momentum. They, I think, are looking better than the Pulse. But I think when the Pulse pull it together, as you heard Yvette say, if both their ends can play well at the same time, I think they can perform better than the Stars. So on that, I think it's going to be a win.
Oh, I agree, Annie. I think the Stars are coming in with momentum, but after listening to Yvette, she's convinced me. I got goosebumps listening to her, and I just think they are going to follow her, these players. They've got that mana. They're going to follow her into this grand final. They will play for her, so I'm going the Pulse.
Okay, well, I'm a South Auckland girl, and I'm going to stick with the Stars. I think the momentum will get them over the line. Hopefully the elimination final was not their final for 2022, because we have seen that in the past, but I just feel like they're invigorated, energised, and are good to go. So, Pulse, Stars, we will see what happens. Whānau, who are you backing? Because it's really tough to choose right now, but the Stars, the Pulse, ANZ Premiership Grand Final this Sunday. Coverage starts on Sky Sport from 3:30. Centre Pass from 4 p.m. Don't miss it. And of course, we will be back here next week talking with you all about it. Until then, mā te wā.